Coming up on The World Today. Hong Kong kicks off its mass testing program for COVID-19 with over 2/3 of testing facilities fully booked. Russia passes the 1 million mark of coronavirus cases as schools and educational institutions reopen across the country. Plus, police detain students who joined anti-government protests in Belarus. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us on The World Today. I'm Akaite Afia. With the rising number of coronavirus infections around the world, has come more effort to ensure more testing, and that's why Hong Kong is doing. The region today began its mass coronavirus testing under a new scheme backed by the Chinese government. We'll learn more about the day's global update.
To school on Tuesday in the central China city of Wuhan, the original epicenter of the coronavirus epidemic that underwent months of lockdown, but which has not seen new cases of local transmission for weeks. State media reported 1.4 million children in the city reported to 2,842 kindergartens, primary and secondary schools as part of a nationwide return to classes. Similarly, in France, 12.4 million children are heading back after a very long summer break. President Emmanuel Macron says the challenges are numerous, but he has appealed to everyone to adopt the same responsible approach as they have for months. Meanwhile, new rules on the wearing of face masks in workplace come into force in France. Hong Kong has started mass coronavirus testing under a new scheme backed by the Chinese government. The voluntary mass testing is being conducted with the help of medical staff from mainland China. The health workers union has criticized the effort as an inefficient waste of resources, while activists have said it could be used to collect DNA samples.
Now, over the course of the last...
Authorities say inmates at a high-security Australian prison lit fires, smashed windows and flooded their cells with water on Tuesday after a lockdown sparked by the coronavirus outbreak resulted in a shortage of staff and services. The unrest began a day earlier at the Arthur Gorey Correctional Centre in the city of Brisbane. 4 days after the local media said the prison went into lockdown due to 2 staff testing positive to COVID-19. The authorities say a shortage of replacement staff, while existing staff stood down to get tested for the virus, had resulted in problems delivering basic services like meals and medication.
India's coronavirus tally is headed towards 3.7 million as millions of mass students sit for college admissions exams after the government refused to defer them. More than 2 million students filed exam centers across the country to take the test for admissions to medical and engineering schools with physical distancing norms, handing sanitization stations and temperature checks in place. The government had declined to defer the test, which have already been postponed twice this year, despite growing pressure from some students and opposition parties fearing rising infections, as well as difficulty traveling to exam centers due to virus-linked curbs on transport.
Yeah, I was obviously worried because the court has said that the exam is going to happen, and then there were so many people who said the exam should not happen. So I was a little bit worried that if it's going to happen or not, if everything's going to be okay when we go out today or something's going to happen.
I think if they're starting bus services and malls, but that they should take the SOPs for the precautions. That precaution has to be taken. If buses are there, they should take that 50% occupancy should be there, or the safety has to be taken care by the management and by the individual also.
Today, Russia passed the 1 million mark of coronavirus infections after more than 4,700 new infections were reported, bringing the country's tally to 1,048 cases at the last count. Russia has the 4th highest case tally in the world after the United States, Brazil, and India, looking at details from the Johns Hopkins University COVID-19 Resource Center website. Additionally, Russia has granted regulatory approval for a COVID-19 vaccine after less than 2 months of testing, prompting some Western experts to question its safety and efficacy. The country has gone on to begin phase 3 of trials of the vaccine, named Sputnik V, on a group of volunteers. It is also preparing to approve a second vaccine against COVID-19 later this month or early October.
Он такой же любознательный, как и вы все. Без его внимания.
Well, let's check in on the UK as Prime Minister Boris Johnson resumes meetings with his cabinet following the summer recess. Mr. Johnson says there is more wretched COVID still ahead and that his government, like the teachers, would continue to work on delivering more hospitals, nurses, and its Build Back Better plan. Schools are reopening across England and Wales today for a new term, having been closed for weeks due to the coronavirus pandemic.
We're going back to the office in huge numbers across our country and quite right too. And of course we know that there is still going to be more of this disease, especially COVID, still to come. And although we know there will be more outbreaks, we're also absolutely confident that we are going to be able to deal with those outbreaks. And bit by bit, this incredible country is getting back on its feet and recovering from this crisis. And we in this government are committed, as you all know, to do absolutely everything in our power to help. And that's what we've been doing over the last few months, and that's what we're going to continue to do. And I pay tribute once again to the work of the Chancellor of Rishi and that we are.
In the meantime, the UK government has rolled out a program to encourage people to walk or cycle, which gives more space for bicycle lanes and pavements to help with social distancing during the COVID-19 outbreak. Britons had mixed feelings about it, but many feel it's a bold move that will likely cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. The government says cleaner air is also a priority.
On automobiles. The Mayor of London has launched a program called
because we've got wider paths now, it's much safer and it's easier to cycle now, and of course the cost as well, because we have lost many income, so we had to cut down on cost, and the car costs normally £100 a month, whereas this one is only £10.
Avoided costs of the ravages of the pandemic, economic, health, and otherwise, and also the current and especially the future costs of climate change. Those costs will be much greater than spending on appropriate infrastructures to improve our cities so they'll be resilient and sustainable well into the future.
French President Emmanuel Macron has paid a second visit to the devastated port area in Beirut after warning Lebanese politicians that they risk sanctions if they fail to set the nation on a new course within 3 months. Mr. Macron has been stepping up pressure for reforms in a country collapsing under the weight of an economic crisis. Lebanese politicians, some of them former warlords who have overseen decades of industrial-scale corruption, face a daunting task with an economy in meltdown, a swath of Beirut in tatters after the August 4th port blast and sectarian tensions rising. Macron says he will be visiting Lebanon again in December, adding that the international community must stay focused on the emergency in Lebanon for 6 weeks and that he is ready to help organize an international conference in coordination with the United States in mid to late October. Staying in the Middle East, the Israeli delegation has departed the United States Arab Emirates, after a historic trip to finalize a pact marking open relations between Israel and the Gulf state. Senior U.S. and Israeli officials, including White House senior advisor Jared Kushner, arrived at the Gulf Kingdom on Monday. Kushner had said on his arrival that Washington could help maintain Israel's military edge while advancing its ties to the UAE, the Arabs' world's second largest economy and regional regional power. The normalization deal is the first such accommodation between an Arab country and Israel in more than 20 years and was forged largely through shares of fears of Iran. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was also in the Emirates, additionally held a chat with a UAE official speaking in Hebrew. Netanyahu and Khalifa Said Al Mahmoud, both speaking in Hebrew, voiced hope to see each other soon in Israel or in the UAE. Iran, on the other hand, feels the United Arab Emirates betrayed the Islamic world and the Palestinians by reaching the deal towards normalizing relations with Israel. The message is coming from Supreme Leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Iranian authorities have harshly criticized the U.S. brokered deal between the UAE and Tehran's longtime foe, Israel, with some officials warning that the UAE and Israel cozying up to one another risk conflagration in the Middle East. Sudan's former leader, Omar al-Bashir, has today appeared in court for the start of a trial over the military coup in which he took power in 1989. Giving his profession as former president of the republic, Bashir seemed in a good physical condition as he appeared in a metal courtroom cage wearing white prison-issue clothes and a medical face mask that he lowered to identify himself. In footage carried by the Sudanese state TV, he said he was a resident in Khartoum's Kober prison, 76-year-old, and had 2 wives. Some of Bashir's former associates appeared alongside him at the trial, which had been postponed because of overcrowding at the scheduled opening last month. Today's court hearing came a day after Sudan's traditional leadership signed a peace deal with some of the rebel groups that had battled Bashir's military and allied militias in Darfur. Bashir is separately facing prosecution over his alleged role in the repression of protests against his rule, and in December was sentenced at another trial to 2 years in prison on corruption charges. He is also wanted by the International Criminal Court on charges of alleged genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity in Darfur. Still ahead on The World Today. There are still a few heartwarming stories amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. How about celebrating a 104th birthday? Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on The World Today. Well, to go back to the UK government has rolled out a new program that's encouraging citizens to walk or to bicycle. But some people are not too excited about it, worrying that it may cost taxpayers millions of dollars. So let's talk to one taxpayer who may or may not have ditched his car for walking or cycling to work. Mr. Dayo Fadina joins us now from London. Thanks again, Mr. Fadina, for joining us on the program.
Oh, it's a pleasure, ma'am. Thank you.
So, are you on board with the new program encouraging people to walk and cycle and the purpose of it, which is social distancing and bringing COVID-19 cases down? So did you ditch your car for a walk or to take a bicycle?
Well, as a matter of fact, anyway, I've always been a walker. I do a lot of walking anyway. So the fact that this very particular measure has been introduced does not particularly make any difference to me. I do so much walking, and I want to believe seriously that it's good for you. It's good for your health, your well-being, and it's also quite helpful and assisting in actually bringing down the COVID-19 situation. I hardly drive these days, so it's something that I would advise so many people to do: the walking and keeping distancing. It's a good thing.
Well, yes, it does sound like a good thing to keep you in shape, but I wonder how Britons felt when the Prime Minister said during his cabinet meeting today that there is still more wretched COVID-19 ahead. Do you feel that the government has been on top of measures to help prevent more cases of COVID-19?
My strong opinion about how the government has actually dealt with this over the last 6 months is lukewarmish, really. They keep on giving the Brits so many mixed messages as to what they should do and what they should not be doing. I'm not sure whether they've gone on top of the situation where tracing and testing has been carried out properly. They've also made a big bungle, a very, very big mess of children going back to school. They're not too clear and sure what the policies and what the measures should be when children go back to school and when even people go back to work. It's been somewhat a disaster, really. I hope they get round to resolving this ASAP, because indeed, if they don't, I could see the COVID-19 situation, I could see another spike during the winter period.
Well, speaking of another spike coming, the economy is reopening with measures put in place, of course. International flights are coming in and leaving, restaurants are reopening, and people are encouraged to wear it out to help out small businesses. So how do you feel as an individual about all of these? Is it too quick? Is it too soon?
Well, indeed, again, because of the mixed messages that have been given by the government over the last 6 months, where people are not too sure, really, as to what they should be doing or what they should not be doing. Yes, businesses have been opened up. People are being encouraged to go back to work. People are also being encouraged to go out to eat. But the state of mind of so many people right now, it's the case that people are not too clear and too sure what they should be doing. People are still quite scared of this very particular virus. All you just need to do is to get onto the public transport these days. The trains, the buses, so empty because people are not just going back to work. People don't want to go back to work. And we've also had a situation where people over the last 6 months have had the opportunity to do most of their work from home. And many people are quite content with that. And the situation whereby they go back to work to encourage so many other people to do the same and to boost businesses that rely on offices and office workers for survival. I can't see that coming anytime soon. It will be a big problem for so many people to be safe and to trust most of the measures that the government is putting in at this point in time.
All right. Well, thanks again, Mr. Fadina, for joining us today on the program, and please do stay safe.
And you too. Thank you very much.
Moving over to China, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has called on the United States to stop elevating its relations with Taiwan, adding that nobody should underestimate China's resolve to defend its sovereignty. On Monday, the United States said it was establishing a new bilateral economic dialogue with Taiwan, an initiative it said was aimed at strengthening ties with Taipei and supporting it in the face of increasing pressure from Beijing. Washington also said it had declassified 6 Reagan-era security assurances given to Taiwan, a move analysts said appeared intended to show further support for Taipei. The State Department's top diplomat for East Asia, David Stilwell, told a virtual forum hosted by the Conservative Heritage Foundation the latest U.S. moves were not a policy shift, but part of a set of significant adjustments within Washington's long-standing One China policy. The announcements come at a time of increasing Chinese threats towards Taiwan and when relations between Washington and Beijing have sunk to their lowest level in decades. Meanwhile, China has demanded India withdraw troops that Beijing said had illegally crossed their shared border after a fresh border flare-up between the two nuclear-armed countries. Indian officials said on Monday Indian forces foiled an attempt by Chinese troops to occupy a hill on the Asian giant's disputed border in the western Himalayas. On the same day, China's military spokesman demanded India withdraw troops that Beijing said had illegally crossed their shared border. China's foreign ministry said Chinese border troops had not crossed the line of actual control. Local media reported residents along the Indian side of the border said the tensions were inconvenient, especially since the mobile network in the area had been shut for 3 days. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has accused Lithuania and Belarusian opposition politician Svetlana Tikhanovskaya of not respecting the sovereignty of Belarus while addressing university students in Moscow. During his address at Moscow State Institute of International Relations, he said that Lithuania had crossed all lines of decency and that the country, along with Tikhanovskaya, were using undemocratic methods which don't exactly respect the sovereignty of the Republic of Belarus. Talking about the suspected poisoning of Russian opposition politician Alexei Navalny, Lavrov questioned why Western countries that were so quick to demand information on the politician's condition were no longer doing the same. And now he's in Germany. Well, there was no stopping the giant cake, music, and dancing in a retirement home in southern France earlier today as one of its pensioners marked her 104th birthday. Workers at Cagnes-sur-Meuse Sainte-Juliette care home were all enjoying the atmosphere despite a surge in COVID-19 cases in the region in August. Since the start of the pandemic early this year, Sainte-Juliette has been spared from the disease. COVID-19 doesn't worry Mary Joseph Marl, who sip champagne while enjoying the festivities. Care homes in France have experienced a high number of deaths from COVID-19, and visits from family members were prohibited for nearly 2 months during the lockdown. They have since reopened, but workers are required to take their temperature several times a day and to be tested every few weeks.
Est-ce que le virus vous fait peur?
Quoi?
Le virus, est-ce que le virus vous fait peur?
Non. Bon.
Plus peur de rien, mais là.
Well, 104 is quite the milestone, so happy birthday to her. That's all we have for the world today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Akaite Afia. Stay safe.